Before we begin this morning prayer, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like this video. God, I'm done asking for more strength just to keep holding everything together. I'm done pretending that pushing through is always noble. I'm done clenching my fists and calling it courage when it's really just fear and armor. This morning, I'm not praying for more strength to keep carrying things I was never meant to hold. I'm praying for something deeper, truer, riskier. I'm praying for courage. Real courage. The kind that doesn't just help me survive the day, but makes me live it differently. The kind that lets me step into the unknown without a backup plan. The kind that doesn't wait until I'm ready. The kind that doesn't ask if I feel qualified. The kind that doesn't make sense, but moves anyway. The kind that comes not from within me, but from above me. From you. Because the truth is, I've reached the limit of what my strength can do, and maybe that's the best thing that could happen. Because I'm tired of recycling the same internal pep talk. I'm tired of trying to feel fearless. I'm tired of chasing clarity like a requirement before obedience. I'm tired of calling my hesitation discernment when really it's just fear dressed up in wisdom's clothes. I'm tired of walking in circles when I've been asked to walk forward. So I'm not asking for more motivational fuel today. I'm asking for heaven's courage. Courage that burns steady, not loud. Courage that doesn't swagger, but stands. Courage that walks without applause, trusts without full understanding, chooses love over safety, and stays soft in a world that rewards hardness. I want that courage, not as a bonus, but as a baseline. Not as something for emergencies, but as the daily substance of how I live. I want the kind of courage that lets me say yes before I see the result, that lets me stay in the conversation when I want to disappear, that lets me tell the truth when silence feels safer, that lets me love with my whole heart, even when it might not be returned, that lets me rest when the world tells me to hustle, that lets me stay grounded when everything in me wants to run. Not performance, not posturing, just the holy willingness to be here, to be real, to be faithful, even when it costs. And God, I know that kind of courage doesn't come from within. Not the real kind. It doesn't come from positive thinking or better routines or reading more quotes. It doesn't come from people hyping me up. It comes from presence. It comes from knowing you are near, knowing you are for me, knowing that you are not intimidated by fear and not limited by my frailty. It comes from trust. And trust doesn't always feel like confidence. Sometimes it feels like trembling and still saying yes. Sometimes it feels like standing still when fear says run. Sometimes it feels like crying and continuing. Sometimes it feels like nothing, just quiet decision, just soft obedience, just a breath that says, okay, I'll go. So I don't need to feel brave to be brave. I just need to move with you, to trust that you are not asking me to be impressive. You are asking me to be available. You are not demanding I become someone else before you use me. You are asking me to be present as I am and let you supply what I lack. So supply it, Lord. Supply the courage I don't yet feel. Fuel me not with adrenaline, but with faith. Fuel me not with willpower, but with presence. Fuel me with heaven's courage, the kind that moves in mystery, the kind that stands in storms, the kind that loves even when there's no guarantee of being understood. And if courage today looks like not knowing what's next but showing up anyway, let it be enough. If it looks like starting small when I wanted to start strong, let it be enough. If it looks like saying, I don't know, let it be enough. If it looks like slowing down when everything screams to go faster, let it be enough. If it looks like forgiving first, let it be enough. If it looks like staying or finally walking away, let it be enough. Whatever courage looks like today, let it be recognize it even if it feels never like what the world would praise. Let me live it anyway. I'm done being ashamed of needing help, done being afraid of feeling weak, done holding my breath, waiting for perfection before movement. Today, I exhale. I release the illusion of control. I release the pressure to have it all figured out. I release the fear of being seen mid-process. I release the panic that if I move forward, I'll fall apart. I might, but you won't. And you are what holds me, not my performance, not my plan, not my perception of being strong enough. So I stand here, soft but steady, open but uncertain, tired but still reaching, and I ask you, fuel me, not for the show, not for the image, for the life, for the small act of honesty, for the one faithful thing in front of me, for the quiet obedience that no one will see, but that's where I want to live now. In the courage that doesn't require proof to begin. God, I already took the first step. I already said yes when no part of me felt ready. I already moved when my mind begged me to stay safe. I already began, quietly, without applause, without guarantees, without a map, and that beginning mattered. It mattered more than anyone will know, more than even I understood at the time. It changed something inside me, but now, days or hours or moments later, I find myself revisited by the old fear. Not the loud, obvious kind, not the kind that stands in front of me like a wall. This time it comes like a whisper, subtle, persuasive, familiar. It says, "You've gone too far." It says you should have stayed where it was manageable. It says it's not too late to backtrack. At least, back there you knew what to expect. And I feel the pull. The desire to go back to what felt like control. That you didn't bring me this far to let me crawl backwards into safety, disguised as stability. You called me forward, and I said yes. So I bring you this fragile in-between. The moment after beginning, but before breakthrough. The vulnerable middle, where I've left the shore, but haven't yet seen the land. This is where I need courage most. Not to start, but to stay. Not to leap, but to linger. Not to impress, but to remain faithful when it's quiet again. Because beginnings are emotional, they're electric, they come with energy. But this middle place, it requires a different kind of bravery, the kind that lives in the bones, the kind that holds its breath and keeps walking, the kind that says, even if I feel everything trembling, I will not run. And I need that now, God. Not the courage of first moves, but the courage of continued presence. The kind of courage that comes after the hype dies down. The kind that chooses not to romanticize the past. The kind that doesn't demonize discomfort just because it's unfamiliar. The kind that stays rooted when nothing around me says I'm doing the right thing, but everything in me knows I'm not the same person who started this. Help me remember why I said yes. Help me return to the altar where I laid down my comfort. Help me revisit the fire that burned when you spoke to me, not in volume, but in clarity. Help me not to seek comfort, but to seek confirmation from you. Help me not to panic just because there's no immediate progress. Help me to recognize that movement isn't always linear, and that progress isn't always visible. Help me trust that obedience builds something under the surface long before it bears fruit above it. You are not rushed. You are not anxious. You are not pacing heaven, wondering if I'll make it. You are steady. You are still. You are here. And if you are still with me, then I am still on track. I don't want the kind of faith that fizzles after one hard day. I want the kind that strengthens when challenged, the kind that deepens when tested, the kind that finds you more real in the trial than in the triumph. And I know that kind of faith doesn't grow in ease. It grows in resistance, in pressure, in the kind of weight that makes me cry out again for heaven's courage, not just to feel strong, but to stay. So I choose to stay. I choose to breathe deeper. I choose to stop measuring whether I'm okay by how comfortable I am. I choose to measure it by how connected I am to you. And right now, even through the doubts and the fatigue and the questions, I feel it. You have not left me. And because of that, I don't need to escape. I don't need to run back to what's familiar. I don't need to rehearse my fears like they're facts. I don't need to believe every feeling that comes dressed as truth. You never promised comfort, but you did promise presence. And that presence is more stabilizing than every plan I used to hold like a shield. So I let go. I let go of the idea that I should always feel brave. I let go of the thought that if this were right, it would feel easier. I let go of the lie that the only way to know I'm safe is if everything around me is predictable. And I return instead to the deeper knowing, the quiet voice that says, yes, it's hard. Yes, it's unfamiliar. But you're still in the story I'm writing. I return to that knowing, not with force, but with softness. I don't push myself to feel something I don't. I simply sit in the sacred middle and say, God, keep me here until your work in me is complete. Fuel me again, not with intensity, but with depth. Not with energy, but with endurance. Not with high emotion, but with holy clarity. Fuel me with the courage to not undo what I've begun just because the feelings changed. Fuel me with the courage to let silence stretch without assuming it means abandonment. Fuel me with the courage to stay present to this day, this step, this assignment, no matter how unglamorous it may look, because if you're still in it, then I want to be in it too, even when it's not exciting, even when no one notices, even when I'm scared. Let this be what courage looks like today. Not a battle cry, but a steady breath. Not a dramatic leap, but a quiet refusal to quit. Not a flawless performance, but a faithful return to the same altar where I once said, God, I trust you. Let this moment be the new yes. Let this hesitation become trust. Let this fear become fire. Let this faith become a flame, not because I stirred it up, but because you're breathing on it again. God, something has shifted. I don't know when it happened. I can't point to the exact hour or the sentence that triggered it, but the fear that once consumed me has lost its voice. The doubt that used to govern every decision has loosened its grip. The pressure to appear confident before I act has been replaced by a quieter, deeper knowing. I am not who I was when I started this. The courage I used to borrow has become something I carry, not as a costume, not as a performance, but as truth, as a way of seeing, a way of standing, a way of walking through the world that doesn't require shouting to be real, that doesn't rely on proof to be valid, that doesn't ask for validation to stay steady. It's not that the fear is gone. It still rises, but it no longer rules. And that changes everything. I used to think courage would feel like a surge, like fire, like something I had to stir up and wear like armor. But now I see it's more like breath, more like water, something that flows through me because I finally stopped trying to deserve it, something that steadies me because I let you give it freely. I no longer wait for it to arrive. I've begun to believe it lives here, in me. Not because I'm brave by nature, but because I've opened enough space in my soul to be filled by you. Because I've stopped trying to protect myself from all that might go wrong and started trusting you with the unknown. Because I've laid down the script that told me I had to be certain and perfect and invulnerable, and I've picked up something more eternal, the identity of one who is deeply, continually, undeservingly loved. So today, I'm not stepping forward as someone trying to be brave. I'm stepping forward as someone who already is, not by title, not by personality, not by training, but by faith, by the daily decision to let your definition of me be louder than the world's, by the radical act of letting peace be my anchor instead of performance. And that changes how I enter every room. It changes how I speak. It changes what I hold on to and what I let go of. I no longer need to be impressive to feel like I belong. I no longer need to dominate the room to feel secure. I no longer need to hide behind perfection to be safe, because the courage that now lives in me doesn't shout. It stays. It stays when I feel ignored. It stays when I feel unsure. It stays when things don't go as planned. It stays when I'm tempted to go back to shrinking. And because it stays, I can stay present, grounded, open, whole. I can speak without rehearsing the outcome. I can listen without fear of disappearing. I can ask questions without being afraid of being exposed. I can hold space for complexity without rushing to fix it. I can live in tension without needing immediate resolution. I can keep my heart open in the middle of chaos, not because I enjoy pain, but because I trust you'll use it. God, the courage you've grown in me isn't about big gestures. It's about deep roots. It's about saying yes without knowing who will applaud. It's about showing up when no one notices. It's about staying faithful when the fruit is still underground. It's about loving people who may never love me back. It's believing that becoming isn't always visible, but it's always valuable. It's about refusing to abandon myself to meet someone else's comfort level. It's about carrying peace like it's the most powerful thing I own, because it is. So today, I live as someone who walks in that courage. I don't question every move. I don't second guess every choice. I don't require external signs to feel aligned. I check in with you. I look for peace. I remember who I am. Not based on how I feel in the moment, but based on who I've become through the fire, through the doubt, through the letting go, through the soft, slow transformation of trust that changed not just my behavior, but my being. Thank you for not rushing me. Thank you for being more patient than I've been with myself. Thank you for seeing this in me before I ever caught a glimpse of it. Thank you for not letting fear define the ceiling of my life. Thank you for gently dismantling every false identity I built to survive. Thank you for not being impressed by my performance and not being dissuaded by my weakness. Thank you for loving me into bravery, not by shouting over me, but by sitting beside me until I remembered how to stand. Let this courage now lead how I love. Let it lead how I forgive. Let it lead how I create, how I risk, how I show up. Let it shape how I rest without guilt. Let it change how I handle rejection without retreat. Let it guide how I make decisions without anxiety. Let it influence how I speak to myself with kindness. Let it move me through this day as someone no longer trying to become courageous, but as someone who carries it like a native language, who walks in it like skin, who owns it, not as pride, but as inheritance, not as ego, but as evidence that you have truly done a work in me. And if I forget, if I slip back into old fears, if I shrink again, if I falter, remind me gently, not with shame, not with "I told you so," just with truth. Whisper it back into the places where I grow small. You're not who you were. You're not lost. You're just being called deeper, and I'll breathe again, and I'll rise again, and I'll walk again, not because I feel brave, but because courage has become who I am. God, I've been letting courage take root deep inside me. I've been carrying it like breath, like rhythm, like memory. I've been learning to walk without panic, to trust without visibility, to move even when no one is watching. But now, something new is stirring, something that doesn't just want to exist, It wants to express something that doesn't just want to withstand, it wants to rise. And that scares me more than I expected, because this kind of courage, the public kind, the speaking kind, the visible kind, it costs something. It pushes me out of the quiet comfort of internal work and into the fragile, unpredictable space of being seen, of being misunderstood, of being judged, of being known, not for who I curate, but for who I really am. And yet, despite a tremble in my hands, I feel you saying, it's time to speak what I've been carrying, time to name what others fear to admit, time to stop apologizing for how I've changed, time to take up the space you carved out for me, not arrogantly, not forcefully, but faithfully. Time to stop waiting for others to give me permission to live as someone who has been with you in the dark and emerged with light. Not perfection, not answers, but light. And that light wasn't meant to be hidden. That courage wasn't meant to stay private. That truth wasn't meant to stay safe. It was meant to be lived out loud. So I ask you now, with trembling honesty, meet me in this new kind of fear, the fear of visibility, the fear of taking up space, the fear of speaking without knowing how I'll be received, the fear of advocating when others stay silent, the fear of being misread, mislabeled, misused, the fear of losing comfort, approval, inclusion. Meet me here, not to erase the fear, but to make me faithful through it, to help me carry it without letting it control me, to remind me that courage was never the absence of fear, it was the refusal to obey it. Help me step forward, not as someone who's trying to prove anything, but as someone who finally believes that I was never meant to blend in where you've called me to stand out. Believes that humility doesn't mean invisibility. Believes that being bold doesn't mean being reckless. It means being rooted. Believes that if you are prompting me to move, then you have already gone before me into the space I'm about to enter. God, if my voice carries weight today, let it be not because it's eloquent or polished, but because it flows from alignment with you. If anything I do shifts the space around me, may it be because I've chosen to remain present, not powerful, but truly here. Courage no longer feels like a secret I need to protect. It feels like a witness I must release. A quiet, lived-out testimony of what you can do in someone who once folded in on herself to stay unbothered, unseen, unheard, but who now chooses to be visible, even if it's costly. And it is costly, not always in grand ways, but in quiet trade-offs. Comfort, familiarity, proximity to people who preferred a version of me that stayed silent. I feel the distance now, but I also feel the freedom, because staying small to keep others comfortable was never a calling. It was a cage. And I've outgrown it. You've outgrown it in me. So if today requires me to speak when silence feels easier, give me words that don't defend, only reveal. If it asks me to say no, let it come from clarity, not guilt. If it draws me toward truth, don't let ego do the talking. Let love. And if I'm being called into any kind of tension, may I walk into it with grace, firm enough to stand, soft enough to listen. I'm not trying to lead for applause. I'm not trying to speak to be heard by everyone. I'm not in rooms to win them. I'm in them because you placed me there, and that placement is enough. I don't need every person's agreement to know that my presence is allowed. My voice is not up for permission. It's been entrusted. So I won't water myself down to remain digestible. I won't edit my convictions to be more palatable. I won't shrink from tension just to preserve comfort. Being disliked no longer terrifies me, because being dishonest, being hidden, being less than who you've called me to be, that's far more costly now. Courage, in this season, looks different. It isn't fire breathing, it's rootedness. It's restraint. It's gentleness in the face of noise. It's clarity without cruelty. It's walking away when the Spirit says, enough, even if others want more. It's holding space when others fumble through the dark. It's creating safety, not control. It's saying the thing with wisdom and sometimes not saying it at all. I don't ask for the loudest voice. I ask for the voice that rings true. I don't need spotlight. I need groundedness. I don't crave position. I crave peace. Let my courage today create that peace, not by dominating a room, but by refusing to disappear inside it. And when I'm misunderstood, may I rest in the truth that you understand. When rejected, remind me that I've already been received. When criticized, be my covering. When shaken, be my center. I have nothing to prove, not when you've already entrusted me with something to carry. So I carry it, not because I feel fearless, but because you are here. I stand. Even if my knees shake, I move. Even if my voice cracks, I lead. Even if no one claps, I speak. Even if only heaven hears, because this courage isn't something I summon anymore. It's something I've become. God, I used to think courage was something I'd need only in the hard moments, in the crisis, the confrontation, the leap of faith. I used to treat it like a tool, pick it up, use it when needed, put it down when things calmed. But now, I see something different. Courage isn't just for battle. It's not just for stepping out of boats or slaying giants or walking into fire. It's for the quiet walk forward when no one's watching, for the daily rhythm of rising in grace and choosing trust before fear has a chance to speak. It's for the steady commitment to show up as I truly am, even when nothing demands it. I don't wear courage like armor anymore. I breathe it like air. Something in me has changed. I no longer ask you to give me what I already carry. I no longer wait for emotion to define obedience. I no longer believe I need to feel bold in order to be bold. I know now that your spirit doesn't surge only in urgent moments. It settles. It stays. It builds rooms inside me where fear once lived. It anchors me, not with answers, but with presence. And this awareness of being loved, being chosen, being held, it has built in me something stronger than resolve, something softer than steel, but more enduring than stone. I used to perform bravery, now I embody it. Not loudly, not constantly, but honestly. And that honesty, the ability to show up whole, not curated, is the most courageous thing I've ever known. It's what lets me say no without explaining, what lets me stay silent when it's wiser than speaking, what lets me speak when silence would be safer, what lets me walk away from what no longer fits without resentment, what lets me stay rooted even when recognition doesn't come. It's not fearlessness, it's freedom from fear's authority. So I step into this day, not asking you to make me stronger, but to remind me I already am. To remind me what we've walked through together, the lies I've laid down, the shame I've shared, the old identities that cracked and fell away like bark from a tree that finally outgrew the narrative. The girl who used to flinch at rejection, she's not here anymore. The soul that used to hide behind productivity, she's gone too. The version of me who needed everyone's agreement to feel stable. You held her, then healed her. Now I rise, not as a version of myself, but as someone new, someone who knows that fear might still whisper, but it no longer gets the final word. Let this day be proof of that, not through grand gestures, but through how I move, how I think, how I choose, how I respond to tension without bracing, how I enter rooms without needing to shrink, how I allow peace to shape the pace of my speech, how I keep softness in my tone, even when firmness is needed, how I walk with clarity without needing constant validation, how I live as someone who knows she's been sent, not by man, but by you. Because that's the deepest form of courage, not the leap, but the lasting, not the spotlight, but the steadiness, not the noise, but the knowing. I know who I am now. I know whose I am now. I know that I don't need crisis to activate calling, that I don't need struggle to make truth matter, that I don't need pain to prove that I'm worthy to speak. I don't need urgency to justify my obedience. I simply walk daily, faithfully, courageously, because I carry the imprint of your spirit in places I once filled with doubt. So, if today feels normal, let that be sacred. If no great battle arises, let my posture still be alert, aware, open to wonder. If no enemy shows up, let me use my courage to create, not defend, to build, not just survive, to laugh, to dance, to rest, to forgive, to invite someone in. Let courage look like hospitality, like honesty, like the daily choice to stay soft in a world that rewards being sharp. Let it look like saying yes to joy without apologizing. Let it look like finally realizing I was never too much. I was never not enough. I was simply someone learning how to carry what heaven placed inside me. Let me be trustworthy with that. Let me walk lightly, not because I take things lightly, but because I trust you with the weight. Let me not make my courage into something others have to admire. Let me use it to create safety, to be a safe to help others take off the armor they never needed. Let them see me not as powerful, but as peaceful. And let that peace be power enough. God, this is the courage you built in me, not for the highlight reel, but for the long haul. The kind of courage that wakes up even when it's easier not to. The kind that keeps forgiving when bitterness would be easier. The kind that rests without shame. That creates without fear of failure. That tries again without demanding guarantees. That lets go when clinging would be more familiar. That starts new things, not to prove anything, but because life is a gift and gifts are meant to be used. So here I am, not asking for a new dose of bravery, but bringing you the one I already carry, offering it back to you, saying, use this, use it in ways I don't understand. Use it to reach places I'll never enter. Use it to light candles in rooms I'll never visit. Use it not just to shape what I do, but to shape what I leave behind. Let people say, not that I was fearless, but that I was faithful. Not that I was impressive, but that I stayed. That I kept walking even when I didn't feel like a warrior. That I showed up again and again, not to win, but to love. That I lived fully, not because I had more strength than others, but because I was fueled by something they couldn't see. Something holy, something permanent, something called heaven's courage.